For more than 2,000 years, armies have marched into Iran. Kings arrived believing they had conquered everything. Cities were captured. Palaces were burned. Dynasties disappeared. And yet, something remained. The language remained. The stories remained. The memory of ancient kings remained. And again, a new Iranian civilization emerged from the ruins of the old. Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire. Centuries later, Arab armies defeated the Sasanian state. Then came Turkic dynasties. Then the Mongols. Then Timur. Then the Safavids. Then European powers. Then the Qajars. Then the Pahlavis. Iran changed rulers again and again. But Iran itself never completely disappeared. So how did this happen? How could a civilization survive invasions that destroyed some of the greatest empires the world had ever known? Tonight, we travel across more than 2,000 years. From the great Persian kings to the rise of Islam. From Mongol destruction to the magnificent Safavid cities. And finally to modern Iran. This is the story of Persia. This is the story of Iran. And most importantly, this is the story of a civilization that refused to disappear. 140, the land of Iran. To understand Iran, we first have to understand the land. The Iranian plateau is enormous. Mountains surround it. Deserts stretch across its interior. And ancient trade routes connect it to Mesopotamia, Central Asia, Anatolia, and the Indian world. This geography created both protection and vulnerability. The mountains could shield populations from invading armies. But the same plateau also stood at the crossroads of civilizations. To the west was Mesopotamia. To the north were the Caucasus and Central Asian routes. To the east lay Afghanistan and the Indian world. And to the south, the Persian Gulf. Iran was never isolated. It was connected to almost everything. Ideas moved through it. Merchants moved through it. Armies moved through it. Religions moved through it. Languages moved through it. And cultures collided here for thousands of years. This helps explain one of the most fascinating facts about Iranian history. Iranian civilization was never simply one unchanged culture. It constantly absorbed outside influences. And then transformed them into something distinctly Iranian. That pattern would repeat again and again. 320, the rise of the Persian Empire. Then came one of history's most famous rulers. Cyrus. Cyrus II. Better known as Cyrus the Great. In the 6th century BCE, Cyrus built an empire that transformed the political map of the ancient Near East. He defeated powerful rivals. He expanded Persian control. And eventually Babylon fell to his forces. The Persian Empire was no longer a regional kingdom. It had become an enormous imperial system. But the extraordinary part was not simply how much territory Cyrus conquered. It was how the empire governed such different peoples. Egyptians. Babylonians. Medes. Lydians. Many different languages. Many different religions. Many different traditions. The empire had to manage enormous diversity. And Persian rulers developed systems of administration, taxation, roads and communication to hold the empire together. Later rulers expanded the system even further. 540, Darius and the machine of empire. After Cyrus came other powerful rulers. One of the most important was Darius I. Darius inherited a vast empire. And transformed it into a more organized imperial machine. The empire was divided into provinces. Governors administered different regions. Taxes were collected. Royal roads connected distant territories. Messages could travel across enormous distances. And at the center, stood the king. Persepolis became one of the greatest symbols of Persian imperial power. Imagine approaching the monumental terraces. Stone stairways. Massive columns. Reliefs showing delegations from different parts of the empire. Persians. Medes. Egyptians. Babylonians. People from Central Asia. People from Anatolia. They appear together in the artistic language of the empire. Persepolis was not simply a palace. It was a statement. The message was clear. Many peoples. One empire. 8 o'clock, Alexander arrives. But every empire eventually meets its challenger. For Persia, that challenger was Alexander of Macedon. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed into Asia. The Persian Empire fought back. But the Persian armies suffered major defeats. One battle followed another. And eventually, the heartland of the Persian Empire was exposed. Persepolis was captured. The great ceremonial center of the Achaemenid Empire was devastated by fire. The Achaemenid dynasty disappeared. At first glance, it seemed as if Persian imperial civilization had been destroyed. Alexander wanted to rule the Persian world. He adopted elements of Persian royal culture. He incorporated Persian elites into his empire. But Alexander died young. His empire fragmented. And Persia entered a new era. The conqueror disappeared. But the civilization he had conquered did not. 1020, the Parthians return. After Alexander and the Hellenistic kingdoms came another major Iranian dynasty. The Arsacids. Better known as the Parthians. They built a powerful empire across Iran and neighboring regions. And once again, Iran became a major power between East and West. The Parthians became famous for their cavalry. Their mounted archers were especially feared. They repeatedly challenged Rome. Rome could conquer many territories. But controlling the Iranian plateau was another matter. The Roman and Iranian worlds became two enormous powers facing each other. Their wars lasted for centuries. Then, a new Iranian dynasty appeared. 1210, the Sasanian Empire. In 224 CE, Ardashir I defeated the last major Parthian ruler and established the Sasanian dynasty. The Sasanians would rule for more than 4 centuries, until the 7th century. They built a powerful centralized state. They controlled territories stretching across a huge part of Western and Central Asia. And once again, Iran stood opposite Rome and later Byzantium as one of the great powers of the ancient world. Sasanian rulers invested heavily in administration, military organization, royal architecture, art, trade, and religious institutions. Zoroastrianism became deeply connected with the state. The Sasanian kings presented themselves not simply as rulers, but as guardians of Iranian order. The empire became wealthy and sophisticated. But great power has a price. Constant wars with Byzantium weakened the state. The final great conflict with Byzantium was devastating. And when the war ended, the Sasanian Empire was exhausted. Then came a new force from Arabia. 1500 hours, the Arab conquest. In the 7th century, Arab Muslim armies entered the Iranian world. The Sasanian state resisted. Persian armies fought major battles. But the empire was already suffering from internal instability, dynastic conflict, social tensions, and the enormous costs of its wars with Byzantium. Eventually, the Sasanian political system collapsed. For many observers, this looked like the end of ancient Persia. The old royal dynasty was gone. Zoroastrian political power was broken. A new religion was spreading. A new political order was emerging. But something unexpected happened. Persian culture did not simply vanish. Instead, it began to change. 1710, Persia after the conquest. Islam gradually became dominant in Iran. Arabic became extremely important in religion and administration. But Persian survived. And eventually, Persian culture became one of the most important cultural forces of the Islamic world. Persian scholars, Persian poets, Persian administrators, Persian philosophers, Persian artists. They contributed enormously to the civilization that emerged after the conquest. This is one of the great paradoxes of Iranian history. The Arab conquest changed Persia permanently. But Persia also changed the world of Islam. Over the following centuries, local Iranian dynasties appeared. The Samanids became especially important in the revival of new Persian culture. Persian literature flourished. And a new Persian-speaking cultural world emerged. The old empire was gone. But Persian civilization had found a new form. 1900 hours, the Mongol storm. Then came one of the most terrifying invasions in Iranian history. The Mongols. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, Mongol armies swept across Central Asia and Iran. Cities were destroyed. Populations suffered enormously. Political structures collapsed. For a civilization that had already survived countless wars, this was another catastrophe. But once again, Iran adapted. The Mongol rulers eventually established the Ilkhanate in Iran. And something remarkable happened. The conquerors began adopting Iranian administrative traditions. They also became integrated into the cultural world they had conquered. The Mongol rulers of Iran gradually became part of Persianate civilization. The conquerors changed. The civilization absorbed them. And Persian culture continued. 2100 hours, the age of Turco-Persian culture. After the Mongols came other powers. Turkic dynasties. Timurid rulers. Regional kingdoms. Iran remained politically fragmented at times. But culturally, Persian remained extraordinarily influential. Persian literature spread far beyond the Iranian plateau. Poets created works that would influence Central Asia, India, and the Ottoman world. Architecture developed. Miniature painting flourished. Science and philosophy continued. The political rulers might speak different languages. But Persian remained a major language of culture and administration across a vast region. Then, a new dynasty arrived. And this time, Iran would be politically transformed. 2230, the Safavids. In 1501, Shah Ismail I established the Safavid dynasty. The Safavid period became one of the great turning points in Iranian history. The dynasty gradually unified much of Persia under centralized rule. Most importantly, Twelver Shurism was established as the state religion. This helped create a distinctive political and religious identity that would shape Iran for centuries. Then came one of the greatest Safavid rulers, Shah Abbas I. Under Shah Abbas, the state became stronger. Trade expanded. Military institutions were reorganized. Architecture flourished. And Isfahan became one of the most spectacular cities of the early modern world. Its mosques, its bridges, its squares, its gardens, its bazaars. Persia was once again presenting itself to the world. Not as a defeated civilization, but as a major power. 2400 hours 30, Isfahan. Imagine Isfahan centuries ago. The enormous Nakshi-Jahan Square. Markets filled with merchants. Craftsmen working with carpets, metal, ceramics and textiles. Mosques covered in intricate decoration. Bridges crossing the Zayandarat. Travelers arriving from distant countries. The Safavid state connected Persia more directly with international trade and diplomacy. European merchants and diplomats increasingly encountered Iran. The country was once again part of a global network. But no empire lasts forever. The Safavid state weakened in the early 18th century. By 1722, the dynasty collapsed. Another chapter ended. But Iran continued. 26:00 Qajars and the pressure of the modern world. The 18th and 19th centuries brought new challenges. The Qajar dynasty ruled Iran from the late 18th century into the 20th century. But the world around Iran was changing rapidly. European empires were becoming industrial powers. Russia expanded southward. Britain increased its influence in the region. Iran increasingly found itself caught between powerful foreign interests. The old imperial world was disappearing. A new modern world was arriving. And Iran had to decide. How could it modernize without losing its independence? This question would dominate Iranian politics for generations. 27:30 The Pahlavi era. In the 20th century, the Pahlavi dynasty came to power. Reza Shah pursued major modernization projects. The state became more centralized. Infrastructure expanded. Education changed. The military was reorganized. The country underwent rapid social transformation. His son, Mohammad Reza Shah, later ruled Iran during an even more turbulent period. Iran became increasingly connected to global politics. Oil transformed the country's economic importance. But modernization also produced conflict. Political opposition grew. Foreign influence became deeply controversial. And social tensions intensified. Eventually, the monarchy collapsed. 29:00 The Revolution. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution transformed the country. The monarchy ended. The Islamic Republic was established. Iran entered a completely new political era. But look carefully at the larger historical picture. The government had changed. The religion-state relationship had changed. The political system had changed. Yet many layers of Iranian civilization remained. Persian language. Persian literature. Ancient historical memory. Food. Music. Architecture. Family traditions. Poetry. And an enormous cultural inheritance stretching back thousands of years. 29:40 Why did Iran survive? So, why did Iran survive? The answer is not one single event. It was adaptation. Again and again. Iranian civilization absorbed outside influences. Alexander conquered Persia. But Persian traditions survived. Islam transformed Persia. But Persian culture became a major force within Islamic civilization. The Mongols devastated cities. But Mongol rulers eventually entered the Persian cultural world. Turkic dynasties ruled Iran. But Persian remained a major language of culture and administration. The Safavids transformed the country's religious identity. And helped create a political framework that shaped modern Iran. This is perhaps the greatest lesson of Iranian history. Civilizations do not always survive by defeating every invader. Sometimes, they survive by adapting. They absorb the conqueror. They preserve what matters. They transform what is foreign. And eventually, they create something new. That is what happened in Iran. Again and again. 30:00 Final. For thousands of years, armies came to the Iranian plateau. Kings rose. Kings fell. Empires expanded. Empires collapsed. Cities burned. New cities rose. Religions changed. Dynasties disappeared. But Persian civilization continued to reinvent itself. From Persepolis to Ctesiphon. From the poetry of the Islamic Golden Age to the blue domes of Isfahan. From Mongol destruction to Safavid revival. From the Qajars to the modern Iranian state. Iran's history is not simply a story about conquest. It is a story about survival. A civilization does not survive because nothing changes. It survives because it changes. Without completely forgetting who it was. And perhaps that is why. After more than 2,000 years of invasions, revolutions and dynastic collapse, Iran remains. Not the same Iran. Not the same Persia. But a civilization carrying, layer after layer, of its own past. And that may be the most remarkable story of all.